Let's talk about how Miguel O'Hara became the Spider-Man of 2099. Miguel was a genius who had been recognized, put through school, and then subsequently hired by Alchemax. He was brought in to head up their genetics program, and because he was clearly smarter, his boss Aaron couldn't fucking stand him. Originally, they just worked on animals and had future plans for human trials, where Alchemax had a plan for corporate raiders that Miguel thought would be best modeled after Spider-Man. Even though Miguel warned them several times that they were nowhere near ready, the evil boss and owner of Alchemax, Tyler Stone, went ahead and started pushing for human trials. Despite all of Miguel's warnings, they pushed through with it anyway, and the results, of course, were absolutely disastrous. The guilt of all of this was just too heavy for Miguel, and even though Alchemax had done so much for him, he immediately goes to Tyler Stone and turns in his ID telling him he'll quit. And while Stone pretends to be understanding and give Miguel all of his best wishes, the drink that he hands him turns out to be laced with Alchemax's patented hallucinogenic drug called the Rapture. The thing about this drug is that it actually bonds itself with your DNA. It becomes part of your genetic coding, and you cannot live without having it. Since Alchemax is the only place that you could acquire the Rapture, Stone did this as a way to kind of force Miguel to keep working for him. Now, Miguel had actually already made a copy of his genetic coding and inserted it into the gene splicing machine that they had been using. So he comes up with the brilliant plan of splicing his old genetic code before he was addicted to the Rapture into his own body. What Miguel didn't plan for, though, was his boss coming in and finding him in the middle of his experiment. He couldn't stand Miguel's young smartass, so while he's in the machine, he changes the genetic file to be inserted into him, and the concept that Miguel had brought up earlier of mixing spider DNA with that of his own. Now, this change mid-experiment causes the machine to overexert and explode. Much to his boss's astonishment and displeasure, he finds that Miguel actually survived. Only, he's not quite the same as he was before. With the introduction of the spider's genetics being bonded with that of his own, Miguel now has talons coming out of his hands, he has fangs coming out of his mouth, and his eyes are so sensitive they look almost white. Not only that, he's stronger and faster than ever before. Now, the Alchemax CEO hired the bionic bounty hunter Venture to track down whoever had destroyed a section of his lab, and knowing he'd need to protect his identity, Miguel grabs an outfit that he had worn to Mexico the year before for the Day of the Dead festival, which also happens to be the only thing he owns which is made of unstable molecules so they won't tear when his talons come out. He dons the suit and heads off to stop Venture from discovering his identity, and in doing so becomes the Spider-Man of 2099.